Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could take virtually everything that's ever happened in education that relates to students' achievement and put them along this continuum? So we can identify what are the things that are up here that really enhance achievement, what are the things that have some effect on achievement, and of course, identify the things that have a negative effect on achievement. And what I've been doing for the last 50-odd years is literally taking thousands of studies and converting them into a common metric so I can put them along the scale. For example, if I ask the question, what's the typical effect on achievement of reducing class size, typically from 30 down to 15? Now let me comment that this morning my attention is entirely about achievement. So what do you think? If you could take, there's about 100-odd studies that have looked at class size, about 1 million kids that I have in the database that have looked at going from classes of about 30 to 15. Do you think the effect is dramatic? Do you think it's going to be on average? Anyone think it's zero, no effect at all? Well, when I turn them around and put them all on the same scale, I get an average effect of about 0.20. Now, for those of you who don't like numbers, you're going to discover that the relativity, where they fall on the scale, is more important. Those of you who do love numbers, this is an effect size, standard deviation unit. And of course, the details are important. Reducing class size by 15 kids is like increasing achievement by 9 months. So it's not surprising that every teacher, every parent, and every politician I've ever met says, we've got to reduce class size. Now, if the effect was 1, you can see a very dramatic effect. So there's not going to be many things in education up here. So I'm trying to give you a sense of the scale. But go back to the point 0. The common argument is therefore that we must reduce class sizes because that effect of 0.20 is worth it. My first point to you this morning is that's the stupidest, craziest, inanest, puerile thing we do in education, and it's destroying our business. Because we're making a false comparison. We're comparing to the 0 point, smaller versus large classes. What we should be doing is we should be saying, what's the effect of reducing class sizes compared to all the other things we do? And the way I estimate that effect is I've synthesized about 800 meta-analyses, about 50,000 studies, and around 240 million kids. Now, you name it, I've got it almost. And I've certainly looked, as you can imagine, right across. What I'm going to talk to you about this morning applies to maths as it applies to English. It applies to young kids as it applies to older kids. I've tended to put my limit of my interest between 4 and 20. So adult education is maybe a different story. I don't know. So what's the average effect? Well, the average effect, if we compare everything, is 0.40. So you can see now that class size is just not there. Relative to the average effect, it's not good enough. When teachers have gone from classes to 30 to 20, it hasn't made much difference. Has not. It could, but it hasn't. Here's 250 million kids. The first thing I want you to note is the 0 point. There. There's not many things we do in education that decrease kids' achievement. And some of these actually make sense. The presence of one disruptive kid in a class negates the performance of most kids. And so when you take those kind of negative ones you'd expect to be negative out, about 95 to 97% of things that we do to kids to enhance their achievement work. And anybody that comes to me and says, I can show you that I'm enhancing a kid's achievement. When a teacher says, look at the evidence, I can enhance a kid's achievement, quite frankly, I don't want that teacher anywhere near me, because everybody can. And my frustration in our business is we have used that 0 point so often that we have got a profession where everything goes, where every teacher is left alone to do what they choose to do and how they choose to do it. Because we say, as long as you can show me we enhance achievement, then I'll leave you alone. There's your 0.4 mark. It's a coincidence, but not a surprise, that there's a lovely normal distribution. Half the teachers out there now are having effects on kids above my average point. What my fundamental interest is what are the attributes of these compared to the attributes of these? How do we make that distinction? How can I make a story So what I'm trying to do at the beginning here is to set the scene. I've got a continuum of achievement. All right, what I'd like to do in the next few moments is I want to go through about 138 different influences from the very bottom right through. And in doing this, my interest is not on any one of them. The details are not my interest today. My interest is how I can build a case of what's up there and what's not down there. All right, I'm going to mention some because I want to paint a story. I'm going to start off with retention. This is where you take a kid in year 4 and at the end of the year you make him do it again. And I say he because 80% of the people who are retained are boys. Of the 207 studies, the 2,675 effect sizes, the average effect size is minus 0.16. If there's a single study that's ever been done that shows that retention is at least even 0, let alone positive, it's yet to be published. It's probably the most systematically negative thing that we do in education. Now that's the effect on achievement. When you add to that the equity issues, you've got to seriously ask, why do we do it? And one of the things that interests me about many of the things at the bottom of my chart is they are the most discussed things in education. For instance, on retention, the first question to ask is who wants it? The kids don't, parents don't, it's the teachers who want it. And when you ask them why, their argument, I think this sums up the problem, their argument is a more problem. If I had that child for more time, I could fix them. And then you turn around and say, but wait a moment, you had the child for a year and you failed, and now you're going to give him the same curriculum, the same kind of teaching strategies, the same kind of peer investment, the same kind of, you name it, and you're going to fix the problem that you couldn't fix in a year? What that kid needs is not more, he needs different. Most of the debate in education, in the policies and in the staff rooms, are about the things that don't matter as much. Number 125 is one that Pat Alexander and I are working on at the moment because it deeply worries me that teacher subject matter knowledge doesn't matter. And we are looking very closely at why it doesn't matter, and we're coming up with a very simple reason why it doesn't matter. Under most conditions in most classrooms, the level of instruction is so surface level and low, there is no need. The biggest manufactured crisis in education is the gender one, boys and girls. Over literally almost 3,000 different studies, the effect is still slightly in favour of boys. All of you who are in teacher education should shake in your boots about 121. And for me, who is also in teacher education, I think it's deeply concerning that we have amongst our teacher educators the most evidence-free people in the world. So it's no surprise to me that their teachers are also evidence-free. Gosh, this is fun. We've just got to the 0.15 stage. A lot of the things at the bottom of the chart are what I would call the structural things. How we group kids, how we throw money at kids, how we build schools, charter schools, all these kind of... Yes, all these are positive, but they're trivially so compared to the ones that really matter. And this is the ones we spend all the big dollars on. Now, homework's one I want to comment on, because homework's one where there is quite a lot of variance. Homework in primary school is close to... is about effects, the overall effect size is 0.3. The effect in primary school is close to 0.1 to 0. The effect in high school is much larger. Homework, particularly longer than an hour, is negative. Homework that's surface level is much more effective than homework that's deep level. And it should make sense to us, because if kids need to be deep and they don't know, they usually need a teacher. There is no evidence that homework relates to the success of kids' study skills. You don't learn to study by doing homework. You learn to study by being taught how to study in the school. And as parents, saying to our students, go into your room and study, for kids who can't do that, it is a very destructive thing for them. It's another reason to explain to them why they can't learn. Homework that's actually done at school is much more effective than homework that's done at home. We've finally got to 0.4. So we're going to start and get rid of a lot of the structural things that we throw the millions of dollars at, and how we paint our schools, and all that jargon about choice, which really means school choice rather than kid choice or parent choice, to start getting into the things that matter. Now, a lot of the things at the top part of my chart are in the hands of teachers. All right, let me start to build a story here. Let me start at number 43. Many years ago, I had a student who did a meta-analysis on the effects on people's self-concept. She actually looked at children and adults. And across all the different programs that affect people's self-concept, what she found was that the most effective by a mile were outward bound programs. Now, that particular thesis had two major effects in my life. The first is I then decided to spend about 10 years working with the outward bound people to understand what they were doing, and spent a lot of time at their courses and working with their people and doing lots of research projects. But looking at the outward bound programs, it kind of sums up what is the model to me of the effective teacher. I'm going to invent a brand new game. I'm going to call it soccer, and you've never played or heard of it in your life. And I'm going to take you out into the fields here at the university, and I'm going to ask you to play the game. I'm not going to tell you what the rules are, and I'm not going to tell you what success is in scoring goals. Can you imagine the chaos that's going to happen out there? That's exactly what we ask most of our kids to do in every classroom on every day. Just do it. What you do as an instructor is you say, this is what you do, team. You take the harness and you put it on, you clip it in, then you get the rope and put it round behind your back, and then you take the rope around the tree and out until the rabbit comes out the hole, and then you pull it tight. And good instructors at this point then say, now you do it. And they stand backwards. And the students then start and they look and they say, oh, well, what do I do? Well, we put the harness on. And actually, that's very easy. It's like sitting in an airplane seat. You just clip it in. And then they say, well, did the rope come around this way or did it come around this way? And was it a rabbit or a squirrel? And did it go around the tree? And what they do after a short time is they start looking at their peers to say, well, what are you doing? And one of the nice things about abseiling is if you actually get the rope wrong, it's very obvious. It slips off, and you don't want that to happen. So there's a lot of peer interaction going on where you're looking. Now, at some point, the instructor comes around and checks. The saliences are pretty high here. And then you get to the point where you say, now, who's going first? Now, again, peer pressure gets in and someone finally gets nominated. And they get to the point, and they go to the edge of the cliff. And everybody realizes for the first moment that you actually don't step down. You actually have to fall backwards. And that requires an incredible amount of trust in the person who's holding the rope. And then finally, they start to go down. And if you've done it for the very first time, it's actually, you don't have much control in one sense. You do have control, but you get to the bottom. And when you get to the bottom, what do you want to do? Yeah? Go again. And the exhilaration of doing it, the emotions, are very high. This, to me, is the essence of what I think good teaching is. The learning intentions are very clear. The success criteria is absolutely obvious. The amount of peer work is dramatic. There is lots of discussion about the task amongst people. It's not all just in one head. There is peer involvement in the task, and then when you achieve the end, you want to excel and do it again and keep going. And this notion of outward bound, I think, sums up what I think you're going to see at the top of my chart. For example, the peer influences are up there. You're going to see on this number 34, challenge. It is an incredibly challenging task for those of you who have never done an abseil in your life. It is an almost dauntingly challenging task, but you succeed.